Good morning, Rick. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Keith. Good morning on this rainy day. How are you?
Man, I'm loving the rain, man.
Yeah.
I am, more so because, we need it in terms of, the dry climate here in Arizona. And, there is always a chance of wildfires during, the spring and summer months. And
Yeah.
so to get this, for 2 days, it's just been really, really nice. How's it there in Sedona?
Same thing. On and off all day, most of yesterday and almost all of last night. I mean, it's just been really great. The garden is looking good, and everybody in the landscaping business is happy about it too.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Hey, so I thought we'd do a podcast here. The title is There's a Difference Between Knowing the Path and Walking the Path.
Mm.
And this was inspired by a friend that I'm going to introduce you to that I've been kind of working with over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. His name is Dras. Everyone calls him Dras. I call him Dr. Dras. Just a super incredibly kind guy, man, really humble, servant leader, just a great guy. So with the suggestion from a friend, Brian Hardaway, who you yet to meet too, he talked to Dras about, what we were up to, and Dras wanted to check it out. And so he's been doing the practice with me for a while. And in one of the podcasts, I think I mentioned something about the Matrix, about there being no spoon or something like that. And
I
and
remember.
so he's like, I never seen the Matrix, man. So I said, you got to check it out. So he watched it, and then he, every day he texts me. I'm like his we're accountability partners. So he texts me to let me know that he completed his practice in the morning, and he is lights out. We're doing this practice. He never misses a day. And so he did the practice, and he's just in a great space. He was a physician, man, who was like most people in healthcare. They care so much about people in the work that they really work themselves to the bone in the service of others. And so this has given him like a rejuvenation, it's restored him. And so after watching The Matrix, he just sends me a quote after giving me his takeaways from one of our podcasts, and just says, there's a difference between knowing the path
Yeah,
and walking the path. And
boy.
so I thought we kick it off with that, Rick. So why don't you start? What does that mean to you?
Okay, well, I think the obvious difference is that one's an abstraction and one's real. And it's always easier to do a platitude, or to have a throwaway line, or to have, know the Four Noble Truths, for example, but not be able to actually live what's required. And the problem is that the abstraction is beautiful. And, in the quiet times, in the quiet times when there's no distractions, man, you're on that path, abstract or not. But when the first time somebody cuts you off in traffic and flips you off, then you have the real confrontation between the abstraction and the real. And that's the very difficult thing to do. But the cool thing, I think, is that, there's no requirement that you are perfect. The idea is that you first start out by monitoring. Okay, I'm reacting to this. Okay, what does that mean about where I am in my practice? It means I'm not very far along. So let's go back and see what we need to do. Why are we doing this? What is the feeling that you're getting from this? What is the root of why you're reacting? And usually it has a lot to do with not being respected. Like, I feel disrespected when this person does this to me. And then you have to come to grips with what your expectations are. And then when you're always dealing with expectations, the big problem is the expectation is what's going to get you in trouble. If you have no expectations, it's easy. Well, obviously none of us do. We all have expectations, and the higher in the food chain you are, the more complicated your work, the more responsibility you have, the more expectations you have of yourself and of others. So it's very difficult to have the abstraction in place, also driving the way that you need to behave to eliminate suffering and to get a handle on your expectations.
Yeah, I think that's well said, man, and defining what that phrase means. For me, I knew to be kind, to be accepting, to practice patience, unconditional love. When someone else does something, to turn the other cheek. I knew to do it, but like you said, man, it's difficult in practice until I made it my practice. And now that I made it my practice, I find that it is much easier to do when my ego pops up and says, I can't believe they said that about you. Like, I'm able to say, let me stay in my lane right here. Let me focus on this. People say what they say, do what they do, whatever. We as human beings, you and I both know we are meaning-making machines, so it doesn't matter. I just really just made everything about walking the path. Everything that happens for me is walking the path, not to me, but for me. Is about walking the path, well, with a significant other, whatever happens, my path is to see the good, and I hope her path is to see the good in me. We're hoping, but like you said, that's my expectation, but I have no control over that. And I think you made another good point that it's really easy to walk that path when you're in Hawaii, when you are when you're on the coast, Asheville, North Carolina, Myrtle Beach. Oh, it's so easy. It's so easy. But even on your way to getting to those destinations, there's a path on the way there. Can you walk the path to this quote unquote paradise? And then the first time the plane is late, the rental cars are all gone, you're off your path. So everything that shows up, I've just found it to be part of the path. And once you, like you said, you accept it, that this is a path, and the goal is not to be perfect. As a matter of fact, there is no goal. The only thing there is this moment, and whatever is, and you practice here.
That's right. And I'm sorry, were you finished? I'm sorry.
I am.
Okay. I was looking back at the time when I was having a difficult time channeling out of the abstraction and the reading of the books and writing down all the platitudes and trying to memorize things. None of that really was important. What's important is the understanding of the wisdom behind it. And what helped me a lot was the idea of asking one very simple question every time I would get caught up and find myself off the path. And that is, remember always to monitor, number one. Okay, so now I realize, oh man, I'm in it again. I'm in it. I'm resenting, I'm judging, I'm angry, all of that. The one simple question I always ask myself is, okay, what is your present condition serving? Who is your present condition serving? Do you feel good about this? Do you, and it always gets back to the issue of the expectation being disappointed. The idea that you were thwarted, the idea that you had a great idea and through no fault of your own, something bad happened because of it, that makes you angry and creates all of these feelings of distress. But the reality, when you ask yourself the simple question, who is this serving? Traffic doesn't care. If someone died, they're dead and it's over. You can't, be angry or hurt or grief stricken. I mean, obviously we go through those things, but my point is that once the stimulus is there, you have to ask yourself the simple question, how am I reacting to this? How am I going to get through this in a way that is the greatest good for all people, particularly beginning with myself? And the answer is, you can stop suffering the moment you decide to. The way is easy. The way is easy for he or she who has no preferences. So the fewer preferences, the fewer hot buttons, the fewer things that tick you off, the better. And now here's one other point. I think a little flesh out needs to be added here. It's not only dealing with things that we dislike, that we create suffering for ourselves because of thwarted expectations, but it's also dealing with people we love who are frustrated and we want to help them. And when you try to help them, it ratchets up the disappointment and the expectation that you hope that they'll be helped by your sage advice, and they aren't. They want to go through their thing, right? So one of the things we have to keep in mind is it's not just you that's part of what you're reacting to. What you're reacting to is a stimulus created by the circumstance that's distasteful, coupled with maybe who you're with or who is in your family or who is your partner, reacting to that same circumstance. Maybe you've got it handled for yourself. They don't, but you love them. So you're suffering because you're watching them try to deal with something and they're not being very successful at it. So my point is that we have to be mindful not only of our own reaction to the stimulus, but part of the stimulus is always going to be the people we love and how they respond. And that's one of the issues, and this is beyond my pay grade, but when we get into things like codependence, we're talking about trying to avoid having to transfer our feelings to someone else in a way where we are depreciated and they are unduly credited for things that really ought not to be debited against you. Anyway, I just think that the transition is tough, but for me, what keeps me on the path is, one, I'm mindful of it. I know when I'm screwing up. I know when I'm swearing. I know when I'm angry. I know when I'm disappointed. I know that. I know it. I got it. Okay. So once I get it, then the issue is one simple question. Rick, who is this serving? How are your inner feelings helping now? And when I first started out on this, the reaction was, well, they're wrong. If they only did this, they could do that. You know, I'd argue with myself about why I was right. And then I would argue with them about why I was right. And it has nothing to do with right or wrong. It's the creation of that inner peace that you're looking for, the calm center that you're looking for. And if that's what you really want, if you want to be right, the path is going to be very long and arduous. If you want love and you want to have calmness and a sense of inner peace and a sense of knowing wisdom and well-being, then the answer is stop the suffering. And that means limit expectations, deal with expectations in a way that don't cause you to suffer. And that includes dealing with people's responses whom you love that are also hurting you. You have to be able to put up a little boundary there as well.
Yeah, Rick, I love that. I think you said so much there, man, that I'm just going to respond to a few things. One of which is just really being, and you helped me with this early on, man, in our little wellness community. And what you helped me with was I was so invested in everybody else, you know, reaching their goals or living their best life or realizing their full potential. I was so invested in it that I was unconscious that I had placed expectations on them, you know, my expectations, because I wanted it for them. I thought that I was just helping them pursue their goals. But how do I know it was more than that? Because when they didn't do it, or when they didn't keep a commitment or do it the way that we agreed upon, or what they said they were going to do, I was suffering when they didn't do it. So it wasn't just me helping. Somehow unconsciously, I had I placed expectations on their journey, on them realizing their goals. And you saw me under a lot of the stress, and I see people with their children, with their significant others, with the people that they care for, and they do the same thing. And I just watched them suffer through it. And you freed me of that. You gave me the first glimpse of that when I called you about somebody that, you know, we'd really helped. He'd really, you know, just, he was a workaholic, a VIP who was really made a big difference in a lot of people's lives that worked under him. He could be a great friend. He was all those things, but there were some other habits that you would be described as unhealthy, you know, particularly with his eating and things like that. And so, and he made an incredible journey in like 8 months. Yeah. He was all in. And then I called you because he started to like drift from the path that he said he was on. And I took it hard. You know, first I started to question, was I effective enough? Mm-hmm. And then I started to, you know, question whether or not he was committed enough. And then I started looking at his life and looking at all the things that he was starting to engage in, and how they were unhealthy for him because they were taking him off his goal. All that conversation, man, is all centered around me having an expectation of what his journey is going to be like, which I have no control over. And once you helped me see that, I was able to deal with it with this particular person and with people that I had a similar relationship with. But I did not do it with just life, all of life, like letting go of expectations. So what you said, as long as you have no preferences and no expectations, there's no suffering for you. The problem is the human condition has that kind of embedded in it with having expectations and things like that. So once I accepted that, then like you said, the next thing to do was to develop a heightened sense of awareness of when it pops up. And then to ask the question that you asked. So I think that is super valuable, that wisdom that you just dropped. And the other thing that I have really learned is that there is this false choice or narrative that I think a lot of people believed in, and I certainly did, that it's impossible to have inner peace and show that you care. It's impossible to have inner peace and be effective. You know, it's impossible to have inner peace and really fight in love for someone. No, man, when you have inner peace, you can more effectively express unconditional love.
That's right.
When you have inner peace, you can be more effective with your work because you're not distracted. And when you're working on your work, all of you is there. You know, it's not, you're not bringing yourself to your work being tired or your abilities being minimized in some way because all of your free time has been working to get ahead or working to catch up or whatever the case may be. Like, you're not doing any of that. When your path is wherever you are, be fully there, you know, and then you don't have to worry about, depleting your energy. And so I learned that I can be unconditionally loving and have inner peace at the same time. And that may mean that my partner is on a completely different path.
That's right.
I mean, hopefully they're doing the practice at the same time. If you and your partner are doing the practice at the same time, that relationship is going to be phenomenal. I mean, imagine that you rarely make each other wrong or blame each other. And if you do, you're able to give each other, the other partner, the space to find their way back to the path. Or if you are further along, you allow your partner to give you a gentle nudge to ask you and extend a hand to lead you back onto the path. And you do that for each other when you're both doing the practice. But when you're not doing the practice, somebody's withholding love, somebody's withholding affection, you're not giving each other space, you're doing tit for tat, you're making each other wrong, you're finding fault in everything that they do, like all the nonsense that you do. But that's why, like this path. But it's not, at least in my experience, it's not often that I was on the path at the same time a partner was, which is unfortunate for them because I just caused so much suffering, but it'd be nice, man. And I think that, if you're going to aspire to something, then that's a nice thing to aspire to. You can aspire to a lot of things, being rich, being superior to other people. How about aspiring to develop a practice, commit to it, that keeps you on the path every day so you can be peaceful and you can be incredibly loving and of service to other people? That's the path that I'm on, man. I'm fortunate that I've got, I got Jamie Vega, I've got you, Pete Sonnenschein, Brian, Tim, Matt. I mean, I got so many friends who are just keeping me on my path, man. And I couldn't be more grateful, man, because without you guys, dude, I'd be off the path more than I'm on it. So thank you.
Well, you don't give yourself enough credit, because all of the names that you mentioned and me as well, of course, trust in you to help me when I'm screwing up, and which happens daily, by the way. I mean, daily, literally daily. I just had an example this morning at the food store where I was about to blow up for somebody.
At the food store.
Ridiculous. Stupid. Anyway, but the story is that it's all a mutual kind of support that you need. I think that's helpful. One little thing I would like to mention, and that is that, it's really tough, but it's absolutely true that you cannot deprive somebody else of the experiences that they need to make their lives more effective. And sometimes it's painful to watch, and sometimes, you want to help and you can kind of figure it out for them maybe, and they don't want to hear it. And I think that that's something that we need to just shut up about, because everybody's on a different path. Everybody's on a different path, and we're all unique in the way that we deal with our problems. Some are effective, some are not. Some people are more effective at doing things that I could never do and have handled it in a different way. So there's lots of different ways to unscrew a light bulb and there's lots of different ways to live your life. And I think when we get to this point where we're on a practice path and we see others who are not, we tend to judge a little. And this is especially true, I found, up in Sedona, where there's so much, there's so much emphasis on enlightenment and doing things that are, supposedly more advanced or spiritual. And I think that it's easy for people to get caught up in the abstraction of it, the idea of, like we started the show with, the idea of enlightenment, or the idea of the practice, versus the actual grind or the difficulty and the pain or the confusion sometimes that comes from trying to apply the principles. So we have to be very careful about thinking that we are in any way more enlightened than the next person. or that other people who claim to be enlightened, nah, they're not. And so I think that the bottom line is, yeah, it's tough to convert the abstraction into the reality, but it's the abstraction that governs the reality. And if you do it well and you stay on it and you're true to yourself and you eliminate or try to minimize your expectations and your desires, good will come.
Yeah, man, you said it all. I'll just close with this, man, to echo a point that you made, which was letting the people in your lives, walk their own path. And some of that, if they don't have some kind of healthy practice in place, and like you said, it's all different. There's different practices to get you to the same destination, which is, well, the present moment, and to be peaceful in that space and to be loving to others and kind. There's a lot of ways to get there. And there are a lot of ways not to get there. There are more ways not to get there. And
that's one way to do it.
That's one way to do it. And you have to let people do it. I mean, because if you're a person out there that's been trying to pull that mule, so to speak, that metaphor, over onto the path, it's not coming, man. It'll get there when it gets there.
That's right.
And a lot of time it takes suffering. There are a lot of people that looked at me and they were like, oh man, this guy has talent. He's got potential. That path he's on, woo, like there's cliffs all around him. I couldn't see him. I mean, I'm running down cliffs. I'm bouncing like in the cartoons. I mean, 9 lives, fortunately, and they tried to help me, man. And then there were some wise people that said, I can't walk it for him. He's going to figure this out themselves. And so they just put up healthy boundaries in their lives and let me go on my merry way. And I stayed on that crooked path the whole time until finally I'd had enough. And then I was like, I didn't even notice that path over there. Wow, man, there's no rocks. It's nicely paved. Every once in a while, there's some rolling hills in there. That's part of it. That's part of it. Yeah. And it's been great, man. And I'm just committed to staying on it. Committed to staying on it.
Yeah, you're an amazing human being. I love watching how your life has progressed, and knowing you for as long as I have, and you've become such a lightning rod for other people to strike, to find, to get some relief from some of the things they're suffering from. You're doing great work, and I really, really am inspired by you.
Oh, thank you, Rick, man. You do it for me, man. You do it for me. So
hey,
thanks for a great show, Rick.
Adios, my man.
Adios.